Welcome to this episode of the Erasing Shame podcast, the digital outreach of Christian Asian mental health. I'm your host, TJ Chuang, and also the director of Christian Asian Mental Health, which shall be abbreviated CAMH. And this is the June 2023 update. And I want to be sharing with you things that are progressing along with this ministry initiative as we go along. In addition to the previously weekly episodes of Erasing Shame podcast, I also want to jump in here and give you a personal and ministry update so that you can keep up with all the activities that we are a part of, collaborating and partnering with churches and ministries, individuals and organizations here in the United States of America. And I'm so grateful along the way over the past 6 months or so, as I've had a couple dozen opportunities to share about Christian Asian mental health, how enthusiastic and well received this ministry initiative has been with so many people, both Christians and non-Christians. And we've had 4 opportunities I want to highlight of developing partnerships and collaborations that are happening around the country, and about a dozen others that are in process, and then also give you an update of what I'm thinking about regarding Erasing Shame podcast. So over the past month, I've had 2 or 3 opportunities to share my personal testimony, which I've found to be a great starting point to share about my own life, giving a background context for where I've come from and why I'm a part of starting Christian Asian Mental Health. And of course, Erasing Shame is a part of that story. And for those of you that are new to the Erasing Shame podcast, we started this in 2018. We're over 130 episodes now, and over the past 6 to 9 months, we've had weekly episodes of Erasing Shame podcast as a part of encouraging Christian Asian mental health. And we formally came under the auspices, I think is the technical term, for nonprofit donations to come through with our umbrella organization, Asian American Christian Collaborative. And we're so grateful for that opportunity to work together collaboratively. And then I'll mention the 4. So yeah, in the show notes, I'll add a couple links to the opportunities I've had to share about my own story with mental health, my lived experience. In short, 23 years of living and managing bipolar disorder, and first went public with that 10 years ago. And then the last, it would be 4 or 5 years, cultivating more conversations about it through the Erasing Shame podcast. And then over the past 8 months, developing this ministry initiative with my good friend, Jeff Lee, to do some more formal activities around advancing care and compassion through Asian American churches and churches that have Asian Americans. And now we have 4 active partnerships and collaborations that are underway. And I use those terms loosely because those terms mean different things in different circles and different contexts. But these are working relationships where I'm helping churches develop their mental health ministries. And that's where the rubber meets the road. And you may have heard in some previous episodes, and I know there's new people that are coming to listen or watch the Erasing Shame podcast along the way. So along the way, I've gotten to meet dozens of people who know about and listen to the Erasing Shame podcast. I don't get a lot of feedback in terms of comments or messages through social media, though I certainly would welcome that. And there'll be a call to action at the end of this episode inviting you to do that, to help me discern what is best use of my time and connecting with you over the course of this summer in 2023. As we all have a lot of activities going on, but I want to be doing well as I can with my own self-care and invite you to be a part of my community care. So we're caring for each other. So let me jump right to what's happening in terms of active collaborations, partnerships. So I've got 4 churches that I'm actively resourcing and finding ways to develop their mental health ministries in their churches. So one's in the Los Angeles area, with whom I've worked most actively over the past 2 months, developing and resourcing their sermons, stories, seminar, and on the way to launching support groups. So that's very exciting. And then one in Houston, Texas. I got to be there the first week of May and had a great conversation for a couple hours. That church already has a counseling center, and they're eager to get started with not only their annual mental health conference, which they've done 2 or 3 years of already. They have a counseling center as part of their church where people can come in for Christian counseling. And then we're collaborating on developing stories that can provide encouragement over the course of the year between those annual conferences and mobilizing lay people for support groups. And then there's one church I'm working with in the Washington, D.C. area that I hope to visit in June with. And it happens to be my mother's church in Rockville, Maryland. And then one in Chicago, Illinois, the Chicago area. And they just kicked off their mental health discussions in the church with a weekend retreat over Memorial Day weekend. Now, part of navigating these collaborations and partnerships is making sure we have clarity about permission and how to talk about those churches. So at this point, they're going to go unnamed, but I wanted to share with you a quick overview and update that we've got 4 corners of the continental 48 states in the USA that are participating collaboratively and working with what we're doing here at CAMH, and that is so very encouraging. And I've got nearly a dozen others that I'm in conversation with about when those churches and perhaps even a few ministries are ready to take the next step in implementing one of the 4 S's, one or more of the 4 S's, a very simple, practical, doable framework for how to develop and launch and have mental health ministry in their churches, sermons, stories, seminars, and support groups. And what those 4 things will do is shape the culture of the church, demonstrate that it is a caring and safe place for those who struggle, show empathy, show that it's safe to talk about, because more than half the battle is stopping the stigma and erasing the shame. And all of this can complement the wonderful resources available through professional therapy and counseling and medication and psychiatry. So that provides the entire span of care, and there's certainly more things that churches can do. I'll mention one more that just came to mind. At a Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health conference just last week, it was for the faith-based organizations in LA County. Over 600 people attended this conference, and one church that is mostly Asian American actually had like 15 to 18 of their staff and team members attend that conference. And so that was just tremendously encouraging. I've reached out to them. I got to meet their pastor and their counseling center, restoration center, gospel care center director, and I hope to have a conversation recorded with them in the coming month so that you can hear firsthand about how mental health ministry has grown over the years at that church in Los Angeles. So things are starting to happen all around the country, and I'll be visiting a church in New Jersey in a couple weeks that also has a mental health ministry. It's a small church of under 100, and Jessica is her name, Jessica Kim, and I are dreaming and praying about what would a Asian American Christian mental health movement look like. So when she tweeted that a couple months ago, I thought to myself, oh, I've got to meet her and talk with her and pray with her and see what we could do together, along with others here in the US of A, and who God inspires and motivates and connects us with. We know that it is a much bigger thing than any one or two or three of us can do. So we are better together and would love to find ways to partner with you, those of you that are here in our audience, whether it's to produce Erasing Shame podcast, to do some of the resourcing and collaborating that we do as Christian Asian mental health. And for those that have the capacity to give financially, we have that available through our website, camh.network/donate. Again, everything's in the show notes at erasingshame.com. And then all the things that I've just mentioned, I'll put in the show notes at erasingshame.com. So that's the AMH. That's a quick update of what's been happening over the past 6 months. I've gotten to meet some great people along the way. Very encouraged that this need is going to help a lot of people over time, and that I've got 4 churches that are working closely with me, and we're co-creating, collaborating, and partnering on developing what mental health ministries can look like in specific local churches. And 1 or 2 of them even want to be teaching churches. So that's a great way to partner, because we do this together, and churches that grow in their vision as God would move, we come to realize that mental health is not just a need in the US, it's a need around the world. And so if God provides people and financial resources and those who know how to build organizations and do things that are more sustainable, right now it's all volunteer by me and a few friends along the way. We've got 2 billion people in Asia that have mental health needs. Not all 2 billion, but at least 20% of them, and it's a public health situation. The crisis is very poignant in developed countries like South Korea and Japan. And then there's a tweet and an article that I'll link to in the show notes at erasingshame.com that mental health is the greatest mission field, the greatest felt need of the 21st century. And so it's not just 2 billion people in Asia, it's potentially 8 billion people around the world. It's the wide open door for the gospel to show up in a tangible way, to care for people, to give hope and healing in Jesus Christ, along with all the other resources that are available here in this world, but ultimately having a connection, a personal connection with our Creator God, who loves us and cares for us so deeply at our most poignant point of need in our mental and emotional and relational and spiritual need, health. That's a wonderful thing that we as the church can bring to people. So I'll close with a thought and then one for Erasing Shame. So one of the previous directors, national directors for the National Institute of Mental Health, Dr. Thomas Insel, wrote a book titled Healing. I'll add a link in the show notes. And he noticed that after 10 to 15 years in the healthcare industry, working with psychology and psychiatry, that individuals who struggle with mental and emotional health, that therapy, counseling, and medication is helpful, but for their long-term recovery, they need 3 things. And they all start with the letter P. Individuals who struggle for long-term recovery need 3 Ps. That's people, place, and purpose. And you know what? For those of us that are people of faith, that so much sounds like the church. The church and faith community is the only place that gather Asians and Asian Americans on a weekly basis and can provide that place of belonging, community, and care, and meaning, and purpose, and that's what's able to get us through the challenges and the suffering of life. So I'd love to connect with you, join us on this process and this journey of bringing mental health and emotional fitness to all of our communities. And then for this podcast, Erasing Shame, I'm going to perhaps slow down on the production cycle. Every week, producing the episodes is a joy. I'd love to hear your encouragement. Add a comment on Spotify. We're now hosted on Spotify, so if you use the Spotify app, there's a reply button. What do you think about this episode? There's links at the erasingshame.com website. You can send in an anonymous voicemail. You can send in a message. I really would appreciate a like, a review, a rating at the Apple Podcast app or store, on Google Play, on Android, wherever else you listen to this podcast, on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, then I will be encouraged to do these episodes more frequently. But if I don't hear from too many of you, then I might slow down on the production on a as available basis rather than pushing for the weekly episode that I've been eager to do and delighted to do. But I'm turning 57 this summer, so I want to pace myself well for the long game, and I want to serve this community as long as I can, but I would love to serve together with others of you, those of you that are younger, show you how I do things. It's an open source effort. I love to collaborate. I love to connect with people. Let's do this together. Let's advance compassion and care for Asians and Asian Americans in the U.S. and around the world, and bring hope and healing to the glory of God and to the well-being of many. So thank you for listening to and watching this episode of the Erasing Shame podcast, a digital outreach of Christian Asian mental health. Connect with me. DJ Chuang is my name, at erasingshame.com. And until the next episode, please take good care of yourself. Send me a word. Would love to hear from you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Erasing Shame podcast. Check out the show notes at erasingshame.com and subscribe to our email for updates. We would love to hear from you, so please add your comments at our website or on social. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any podcast app, and you can also subscribe on YouTube or follow on Facebook. Please add a rating and review so we can reach more people with our message of health, hope, and compassion. This podcast is the digital outreach of Christian Asian mental health.